Good morning. Welcome back to Life Source Coaches. I'm Dave.
And I'm Sue.
Today we are into tip number 2 for resolving quarantine conflict. And so tip number 2 is to use the speaker-listener technique. And we've got our hats on. Sue has the speaker hat on. I've got my listener hat on. And we'll give you some more details of why and how that works as we get going on this morning.
Yeah, so we find oftentimes whenever we are speaking about a topic, God gives us some real life experiences in which to practice.
Unfortunately.
Things like conflict resolution. And this is a unique time, and we've mentioned that before with oftentimes competing agendas. You have your things to do, I have my things to do, and we have limited resources.
And even more so in a season where we have health worries and concerns. Some of you, our compassion and our prayers go out for you who are struggling personally or with others that are impacted with sickness during this flu season, even if it's not about COVID, as well as dealing with conflict from the quarantine. And so we are feeling for you. We're experiencing some of that. So we're speaking and preaching not from the pulpit, from the pew this morning.
Yes, real life examples. And as we were in the midst of our real life conflict, one of the things I was reminded about is a couple of things. One was that we can have all the tools in the world, but unless we actually pick up those tools and use them, they really don't do much good.
And today we're using the speaker-listener technique, and many of you are probably already familiar with that, but it's kind of time to take it out of the box because we don't often use or go to our toolbox. We go to the standard hammer versus the screwdriver or the plier. And so this might be a technique that you're familiar with, but maybe need to dust off and put in place.
Blow it off, put it back out in a place we can see it and actually utilize, and invite your partner to do it with you.
Yeah.
So I had a client say that to me the other day, that she knows this tool and they've been to marriage conferences where they've learned these tools, but they're not actually using them. So last night in the midst of our conflict, we practiced this.
For sure. And so today we're going to be using the speaker-listener technique, and that's what our hats are for. It's super simple. It's kind of challenging, though, to put into place. And so one of the techniques that we have is the hats. It's to remind ourselves that there's a speaker, and Sue is going to have the floor when she has that speaker hat on to be able to share how she's experiencing this conflict and her perspective, because the goal is shared understanding. Usually conflict occurs when we don't understand one another, and our tendency is to be understood before understanding.
Right.
And so somebody has to go first. So the speaker hat is for that person who's going to go first and share, and then the listener hat is for the person who's going to be seeking to understand.
That's right. The other one last thing I was reminded about in the midst of our conflict is that anger is a really good way to recognize a problem.
I was the one that was angry.
I got angry. It's a really good way to recognize a problem, but not a good way to solve a problem. And so anger is a good way to recognize a problem, not a good way to solve a problem. So oftentimes when we're angry, we're really sad, afraid, hurt, fearful. And so as I experienced anger, I worked hard to talk myself down and say, what is the real issue here? What do I need to address? And to diffuse that so that I could actually communicate it. So
right. Now there's advantages to using this technique of speaker-listener.
Right. And one of those advantages is it stops the spinning. I oftentimes say that swirling sound we oftentimes get into is kind of the flushing of the toilet, where you're spinning and reacting to each other.
And things just go downhill from there.
You really don't it's not productive.
The other advantage is that, and we mentioned it, it brings clarity and shared understanding to what each of you are sharing and saying.
Right. And it can help us feel heard and validated so that we don't need to keep pounding the issue.
Right. And so, therefore, the two hats.
Right.
And the example we want to use this morning is we have this little pattern of that occurs when we're cleaning the kitchen, especially when we're cleaning the kitchen together, because we're two different people. I am Detail Dave. I cannot clean the kitchen in less than about 15 minutes because I have to clobber every one of the little details about the countertops, the dishes, placement, where things are put away thoroughly.
For those of you who are familiar with the Enneagram, Dave's a 1.
A little bit of a perfectionist. Or a lot of it of a perfectionist. But Sue, she is Swift Sue.
Yes.
She cranks it out.
Let's get her done.
Yeah. And so you can imagine when we're doing dishes, Sue is doing the washing. Oftentimes I am doing the drying. And as I'm drying, I realize, this didn't get cleaned. And instead of just saying, I'll say, here it is again. I get I'm not hysterical. I get historical. I say, you always. Why can't we? And so I get critical. I get kind of demanding, shaming.
Yeah.
And that's hard on you.
Yeah. It takes a toll. So as a speaker, some of the rules for the guidelines that we're going to be putting out there today, we will put these in the note, a copy of these in the comment section. But rules for the speaker. Number 1, speak for yourself. Stay on your lane in your side of the street. Number 2, keep statements brief. Don't go on and on. Just try to get to the point and keep it brief. And then lastly, pause so that the other person can paraphrase. We can oftentimes talk for a long period of time and then the person has forgotten what it is.
Or is checked out.
Yeah.
So we want to be concise. And then as a listener, we want to make sure that we paraphrase what we hear. That the whole point of speaker listener and then switching hats afterwards is that we come to shared understanding. And so we want to paraphrase and not rebuke, not rebut, not ridicule, not react.
Not even respond, even though we're until later. What we want to do is just summarize and be present in the other person's experience.
So my job as the listener is to do the listening and the summarizing while she has the floor to be understood.
Right. Rules for both speaker and listener are when the speaker has the floor, they keep the floor until they feel understood. The second thing is to share the floor. So to take turns with sharing, being the speaker. So we'll change hats at one point in time.
And so, for instance, when I go, you didn't clean this knife well.
Yeah.
And again, Sue, take that speaker out and share your experience with that.
So, and I'm noticing a pattern that when we are cleaning the kitchen or doing dishes, if I miss something, and I know that can happen frequently because I'm not the detail person you are, I don't have the good eyesight that you have. But what I notice is you express irritation with your tone and your comments, or exasperation, or make a joke, or laugh. And when you do those things, I find myself feeling defensive. I feel judged, and I feel some degree of, it kind of kicks into my shame button.
So what I'm hearing you say is you feel shame, discouraged, that when I get critical and ridicule, or when I notice that something didn't get cleaned.
Right.
What did I miss there?
Just that I feel defensive, and I don't think it gets us what we want.
So when I get critical, it makes you defensive, and then it causes us distance and more conflict.
Yeah. So my request would be that either that you just put a dish back in the wash area, so I will know that it needs to be redone. If I have a question about where it is, I'll ask. Or maybe we even switch roles, and you be the washer and I'll be the dryer.
Okay, so a request would be for me just to leave out the exclamations and ridicule. Just put the item back into the dishwasher and let you do it again. Or say, hey, let's switch roles. Why don't you go ahead and take the dry towel and I'll take the washing.
Working your strengths.
Okay. So do you feel complete, like you've been heard?
Oh, hello. Real life, real time. Yeah, I feel good. Do you want to switch?
Sure, let's switch hats.
All right.
I'm not sure that I realize as I'm observing that you're doing the best that you can, and I realize that I'm kind of a perfectionist. So my thoughts are, you really don't care as you're in the Swift mode, and I don't really take into consideration that you probably may not have just had seen that you missed cleaning the dish thoroughly, or the knife or the fork or whatever it was. And so that's kind of my assumption, is that you really don't care.
Okay. So your assumption is that I don't care about clean dishes or the values that you have. And I'm also kind of, I don't know that you said this, but I'm wondering if you feel a little bit disrespected. Is that right or not?
Probably. I think I have this expectation that things should go smoothly, and that we should always be in agreement, which isn't always the case. And so that's some of my aspects. I probably subconsciously want to be respected, and when I've made requests before, I expect you to all of a sudden have perfect eyesight and to be very detailed Dave instead of being Swift Sue.
So you think because you've made the request before that I should just get it and do kind of...
I think I live out of that expectation, which isn't always fair to you. And so I think I appreciate and I like your idea to say, just drop the dish back into or to switch roles. So I think that's a good action plan to move forward.
All right.
Okay?
All right. Feel heard?
I feel heard. That's why I'm handing you the hat.
All right. I think we can wrap this up just for the sake of time.
Yeah.
We're going to expand on the speaker listener technique into a really complete tool that we want to share with you when we do our workshop on communication. That is going to be in 2 weeks. And stay tuned for more information on that.
Yeah, we'll post that up for you. As well as in the comments section, I'm going to post a TEDx blog that talks about the neuroscience of speaker listener technique. So if you're a detailed Dave and you like the underscoring of why this technique is useful and helpful and productive, you can dig into that as well.
All right.
Thanks you guys for joining us.
So just a reminder, invite your partner into the speaker listener technique and actually try it. Say, let's practice this.
Yeah. And then leave us some comments of saying, okay, here was the issue that we used the speaker listener technique, and here was the fruit of that. And realize that it may not be terribly fruitful the first few times, because it's not always easy to do that.
We encourage people to start with a simple, not super heated topic when you first try this out. Not a super hot one, but to start with something that's not...
Right. And you may want to do something like get some hats, or just use an object to say, okay, you have the ball, it's in your court, I'm going to listen while you share, and then toss the ball back when you're complete.
Yeah.
So just some ideas. Let us know how that works for you guys, and blessings on your day, and we'll see you tomorrow here for 10 Minutes at 10 and tip number 3.
Thanks for joining us.